Back at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, Ohio State's sixth practice is in the books. We talked to tight ends coach Keenan Bailey today. We also talked to defensive line coach Larry Johnson back for his 11th season. This might be as deep a group as he's had, maybe, but a lot of that hinges on the development that takes place this spring. Some guys having to take sort of the next step and be that second level behind what we know is four established guys who all returned from starting roles last year, put off the NFL draft to come back for a fourth or fifth season in Ty Hamilton's case. So, Stephen, what are you hearing, seeing? What is the biggest development you think that's happening with this defensive line right now?
I think it's Jason Moore. It just has one of the guys who did not early enroll. And Andrew, when we were out there for fall camp last year and we saw him, it's like that dude looks the part. He's 6'5", 295, according to Larry Johnson. It's just he didn't early enroll, and so he was going to be a little bit further behind some of the guys who did early enroll. But if it feels like he's going through his first offseason and physically he looks the part and he's starting to catch up on some things mentally and just learning the system and whatnot, they need three techs. Your two starters are two guys who can play either way. But if you've got a guy like Jason Moore who can be basically a bigger version of Michael Hall at that three tech spot, that opens up some things for you on the defensive line, especially on the interior where they need depth to get through this year. But you also just need playmakers. The defensive tackles were playmakers last year, and it feels like Jason Moore can be a guy who can be a playmaker on the interior.
Yeah, he said it's been a surprising spring. Larry Johnson did, how much Jason Moore has stepped up and called him kind of the ideal or an ideal three-tech for this defense. Andrew, what do you think is the biggest development that's happening right now?
That's happening right now. I'm going to zag a little bit. I think Kenyatta Jackson needs to have a really good spring because we can talk about the interior and it's basically just pick a name out of a hat and there's a glut of guys that we could all talk about. We could say, here's what this means, here's what that means. There's enough names there where you feel okay about it. After Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, where do you feel the defensive end room is at, right? Like you've got two future first, second round NFL guys, and then you have Kenyatta Jackson, and then what? So I think for me, it's you need premier pass rushing from Kenyatta Jackson because Larry Johnson got asked about this today. He was like, 17-game season, what do you think? And he's like, well, it's never been done before. So ask me that question during the season. And we've talked about this ad nauseum where I think it's going to be one of those situations where it's you got to find a series here, you got to find a series there in game. You obviously got to take them out when it's 35-0. And you can't have your pass rush dip off like crazy when that happens. I just think there's enough in the middle where there's enough guys where you can figure something out. On the edge, I think you need some versatility. I think you need some upside, frankly. And I think if you can add Kenyatta Jackson into that mix as a true impact, okay, there's, a drop-off maybe a little bit, but it's not a big one, then that's the situation you need to be in. So for me, I think Kenyatta Jackson's got to be the guy where you're looking at this room going, man, he's already really good, and a lot of people are already really high on him, but we really need him to step up in 2024 and play a key role.
And Jackson's intriguing to me, too, because, as you're saying, maybe he's only playing, and Larry Johnson was saying, the second-level guys have to play 25, 35 snaps, and they have to be ready to do it at the beginning of the season. That's the whole point of getting you through 17. But if Kenyatta Jackson is not the all-around player that Tuimoloau or Sawyer are, but he can be sort of you get everything you can get out of him as a pass rush guy for those 25 snaps. Yeah, that's what really can be a huge asset to this defense. When Larry Johnson was asked who his third defensive lineman was going to be, or third interior defensive line guy behind Ty Hamilton and Tyleik Williams, the first name he said, now he named several guys, the first name off his tongue was Caden McDonald. And we saw last year the strides that he made down the stretch and the way that he was finding himself on the field more, finding himself in the mix more. And from the way Larry Johnson was talking today, it sounded like that has continued on into the spring. And they need 5 or 6 guys, really. At least 5 to get a good rotation there. And Hero Canu's going to be in that mix. Jason Moore is going to be in that mix. They finally have Will Smith healthy and Tywan Malone after a year and now being here for his first spring. They like where that's going long term, but you really want one of those guys. Somebody's got to emerge as like a real impact player. It can't all just be depth. And I think there's a chance that it could be Caden McDonald as much as anybody else. Just the way that Larry Johnson's talking about him and the way that we saw them trust him more as we got to the end of last season. But we're going to hopefully see some of that ourselves on Saturday for the Student Appreciation Day scrimmage. We'll get to maybe see some 11-on-11, at least some 7-on-7. That won't involve the lines as much. But when we do, we'll be texting you everything we see and hear at the Woody. Get the text 614-350-3315 and much more talk about this on Buckeye Talk.